My name is Bill Groves. I'm the chairman of the Economic Development Commission, and with me is Larry Dunn. He can introduce himself.
Chairman of the Conservation Commission.
We have been asked, and we do try to partner together when it comes to issues that come before the town that have interest on both the conservation side and the economic development side. So we're asked to host this forum to bring forward the data center that's been proposed at this point, an agreement that the town council is looking into. The purpose really is to get information out. So we have Tom Quinn from New England Edge that will be giving the presentation just to show you what the proposal is. And then we will entertain questions. And with that being said, really this forum is for questions, so I know people probably have strong opinions one way or another, and I respect all of those, but we really try to keep this where everyone has the opportunity to ask the questions that they have. So when we do go to the questions, we're going to alternate between Zoom as they come up and the people in the audience here. And to limit it, you can do your preface of what your concerns are, but try to keep it to 2 to 3 minutes and have a question. So we'd like that to be answered because that'll get out to the community. So with that, Larry, you have to add anything? Or?
Other than I want to thank Mr. Quinn for coming and participating in this public event. And also that I want to reiterate what Bill said is that conservation and business really do go hand in hand. The better the environment, the more conducive it is for businesses to come here. And I will say that, in regards to this particular topic, that a data center facility can be one of the most conservation-friendly types of development you can have if it's done with the latest and greatest of the technology and consideration of all the environmental aspects of it. So with that, I think we have your introduction, about 15 minutes or so for
I'll try to keep it a little bit shorter if I possibly can.
Shorter is better.
Yes.
More questions then.
Thank you for having me tonight. Chris Regan, who some of you might know, is on our team. My son over here in the tie is with me, Chase Quinn, and Jim Rossman is the engineer that we're using on this project in Groton. I think it's probably, there's been a lot around in the press, and this data deal has attracted an awful lot of information, and it's attracted an awful lot of controversy, and it's attracted an awful lot of players that want to get involved, and everyone thinks it's their deal, and they have to all pull together. So there's been some things in the press. I want to just give you some background on me. The town of Groton's done a full Corey check on me, credit check, and all that, and that's all squared away at this point. I grew up in my school years in East Lyme, Connecticut, right down the street, and I know the area very well. I biked all through the area and so forth, and spent a lot of time at Mystic. And Chris and I found each other in later life. This wasn't something that came up early. The overall concept for this was I came to Connecticut, was heading back to my roots from Cape Cod, where I did a lot of development, and I was looking at doing some condo projects. I built a lot of condos on the Cape and other developments, and worked on hotels and commercial buildings and so forth. As things developed, I was enticed to come down to look at a project. During the course of that enticement, someone said, there's something coming, and it's going to be data centers, and you probably have a skill set with the relationships that you have. You might be able to put something together in the state. So there was a particular guy that had a great idea to do this. He's since passed away. But in the course of putting some people together, they asked me to spearhead it, because I had that particular skill set, and I went out and tried to pull those pieces together from a dead start, and we made some progress. At that time, I was only in charge of one single thing, that was going to the town and get boxes on paper approved. That was my job. That's what I was paid to do as a consultant. I never had any shares. I didn't have an NDA. I didn't have a contract. It was something that they asked me to do. So I went and did that. You'll read an article in Montville about some things that were approved. I was never in charge of anything to do with a gas plant, and this was premised, unbeknownst to me at the beginning, I found out later, that a gas plant was the premise of this whole thing. Now, you'll see that with the Killingly gas plant, for example, it's very hard to get these gas plants approved, and with siting council, it could be many, many years to get this done. I knew that didn't fit the confines of what the data center operators were looking for, and I'll get into that in a minute. So the partners ended up suing each other. I wasn't a partner. I had nothing to do with any of it. They sued each other. I did my job. I got my permits. I was successful. I realized at that point that this is going to have to go through the state. 32 states had data center legislation just a few years ago. Indiana came up with a 750 million 30-year deal, and the next state that was coming into line was Illinois. And Illinois has a little bit of a different deal. There are some states with no data center enticements or inducements to come to the state. Just a few left, by the way. There are now 34. The states that don't have it are the states that don't have enough population that require this level of connectivity. Here in New England, there are no hyperscale data centers whatsoever, which is going to hurt us if you read in deep. There's an article, and I don't want to digress, but it's very important, that just came out today, just about an hour ago, from Dr. Lin Zong, who's Yale Computer Science. You can look him up, and you can also go to the Connecticut Examiner article that just came out. I really suggest you do it because he did a better job than I'm going to do here tonight, explaining all of the different components of data centers and their need as a public, basically a public utility in this region. So let's continue on with this. So as of January of last year, we were in a capital raise, and we found someone that was going to come in and work with us, someone that I had known previously. And there was a promise to come in and do the job under a company called GotSpace. That did not fund. The guy was defaulted. In the course of that process, I was papered out of my own project. They took me out. There's a lot of paperwork, but I was completely removed from the process. I understand that they're moving forward and doing whatever they're going to do, and that's fine with us. I would like you to know that this particular site that we're looking at was not covered under that agreement, and that I'm an open book for any of those other questions. So that company is going to go do what they're going to do, and we're going to move forward with what we have here. The next step in the process was to get some legislation passed. Not an easy thing. It did take a couple of years. There was a lot of self-funding during this process as well. And when we got up to the Capitol, we weren't sure how this was all going to go. So what we did with DECD and had meetings with the governor's office, David Lehman, Tony Roberto, with Advanced CT that was CERC, we had to go through a very detailed process. I met with Connecticut Council on Technologies. We met with Connecticut Business and Industries. We met with the unions. We had a take on everybody, and we tried to put this together in a format that would be competitive nationally. In other words, and David Lehman said it best, why would you want to do this if no one's going to come when you get done? In other words, we have to be marketplace competitive. I set off on over about 3 years. I've traveled all over the United States and many parts of Europe, going to look at 3.2 megawatt generators in Austria, for example, going to see the Caterpillar plant in the U.S., traveling to West Coast venues, talking to private equity lenders. So we could create a structure and understand the capital stack as best we can to be able to get this formula put together so it would actually work for the state of Connecticut. So I had a concept of a data corridor, which was working with certain towns where the municipal electric could be bought in the day-ahead market. That was important. That the regulation was possible. In other words, we're not going to convert residential to industrial zone. We had to find we had to find industrial land. We also had to be near main trunk fiber, which this piece fully supports. It's right on the fiber line on 95. And we have to be able to hook all this up in a timely fashion. Now, there are some examples. You can look at Albuquerque, New Mexico, where Facebook dragged power out into the desert, and it's just a megalopolis of a site. It just goes on for miles, and it's just a center in the desert. We don't have that in New England. We can't clear four square miles of trees for solar to support a data center. And by the way, that's what it would take, 4 square miles. So that's off the table. We're not going to be able to use fuel cells in southeastern Connecticut because at this point there's approximately, and these are Norwich Public Utility numbers from a year ago or more, there's approximately 12 decatherms left. It's not very much of all the gas. And if you look up, the end of the line for the Northeast is Cape Cod. They actually had a moratorium on gas permits on the Cape because down in Provincetown they couldn't turn an oven on, but no gas was coming out. So we're starved here in this region for gas. Fuel cells take a lot of gas. The amount of gas that's available, if you could get it here with miles and miles of upgrades, would be enough to run maybe an eighth of a data center the size we're proposing. So fuel cells are really a non-starter. Solar is really not going to work. The reason we're here is because there is an opportunity for the ratepayers, against what was recently written in the paper, to do very well with this job. And I'll tell you how it works. We buy in the day-ahead market. We buy the utility in the day-ahead market. We can also buy futures, but we'll buy in the day-ahead market. That is X amount of cents per kilowatt. On top of that, there's distribution, which is the Eversource factor, and then there's what's called final mile pricing. That's the utility company's profit. This has nothing to do with individual homeowners except this. It's a huge windfall for the homeowners because the profit that they make will be on a 32 megawatt data center somewhere, depending on the final deal, so I don't want to give an exact number, but somewhere between $1.8 million and $2.2 million per year for 30 years. That's going to be on a 32 meg based on today's prices, based on our assumptions in the marketplace. That's approximately where it is. So in other words, it's a big number. So that's part of the economic benefit to any municipal utility that's pulling this forward. On top of that, there's a municipal host fee agreement. When I put together these host fee agreements for this and other towns, I wanted parity throughout. I wanted to make sure every town was treated fairly, that the mayors could call each other and say they have the same, situation. Now, some of the towns back then, that was under the GotSpace brand, had a little different things. What I did on this particular contract, and it was published in the paper by David Collins yesterday, which is great. And if you read down the contract, you'll see that the data center size that we want to build would be approximately $1.5 million per year. I think that site's between $15,000 and $20,000 a year now in taxes. This would be $1.5 million per year. Now, what does that mean? You're hearing in the marketplace data centers are tax-free. You're right. The state had to exempt the taxes to be market competitive nationally, so people in the marketplace, those decision makers, they call those data center siting councils, so those people would at least look at Connecticut. I always make the I always use an analogy. I said, this isn't a deli where people are taking tickets and the line's out the door. There is nobody in New England. I have been flying around the country to Los Angeles and Seattle and even Salt Lake and so forth, Austin, Dallas, trying to entice people to come to the state. Now, why didn't they ever come here before? If you look at the map, the data center map for the country, New England has nothing in it at all. There are 4 keys to data center development in a particular region, and we are bone dry in New England for data development. We are going to need it for the Internet of all things, driverless cars, all of these things. And please read the Connecticut Examiner article when you get a chance with Dr. Lin Zong at Yale, who I've consulted with on various occasions and emailed. Very big supporter of the connectivity project. He's co-authored many papers with Microsoft on 5G RAN. These are things that we don't have to discuss tonight, but I just want to tell you, very, very prominent guy, Princeton graduate. Dr. Zong was important to the process. So come back to this site. This particular site, assuming we get through the permitting piece with an envelope plan, and I'll tell you, we have a plan up here. I know it's small, but you're welcome to come up and look at it. I can answer questions. This is a piece owned by Hazelnut Trust, I trust, right? And it's about 168, right? 168 acres. We also have another 5-acre piece adjacent to it that we just received a contract on. And so it's going to be around 173 acres or so. A data center of this size has a footprint between 2 and 6 acres, roughly. Now, it depends on the user. A certain user will come in and say, we have to have everything on one floor. Some will go 2 stories, and that's the norm. But very few data centers, except for in the Far East, are vertical. They like to keep them low and straight. Now, a couple things about water, sewer, and electricity. Data center developers, and it's reflected in the agreement, are responsible for all of the utility upgrades. This does not go to the ratepayers. They take care of all the utility upgrades. They take care of all of the sewer line extensions in the town to get to the site. And they take care of all of the water extensions necessary to get there. This will not be like Facebook had, and we're not talking to Facebook, but we are talking to other companies at this time. Facebook, you'll see at the Tennessee Valley Authority, uses a ridiculous amount of water for New Englanders, but it's not ridiculous for where they live. Millions of gallons go through a day, and they have a huge infrastructure. They have nuclear power plants. They have all kinds of backup generation. So that area is ripe. But why are we talking about New England? Because 1/10 of the entire United States population lives within 200 miles of this exact location. We're going to need to have that broad connectivity, almost like a public utility coming up in the future. We're going to need that connectivity. And you'll learn more from the horse's mouth, Dr. Lin Zong. So he probably wouldn't like I said that, but that's where we're at. So the water sewer. Now, as far as the water recharge district, we're not in that district. We are hoping to stay fully away at maximum lengths per regulation from water sources, because it's obviously an easier approval process. We have 173 acres. We just need a small footprint compared to that. There's been some questions out. Are we going to take all the trees down and clear the foliage? The answer is no. We're not going to do that. We're going to clear for the data center and the land around it. Now let's talk about traffic, because this has also come up. The town of Wallingford, where I was previously working, we may be down there again, but the town of Wallingford was not going to require a traffic report. There's about 80 jobs or so, permanent jobs, that run with the data center. The bigger the data center, the more the number of jobs will increase, but it won't probably double. So I would say, based on the folks we're talking to, we'd have between 80 and 130 or 40 full-time jobs at that site, including security and maintenance and so forth. The building would cover approximately 6 acres. That's subject to change. We intend to go to planning and zoning with an envelope plan, which is basically an outline of where we could put the building on the site. It won't be large, but it will be there. The parking coverage, very minimal for an acre. You'll go to a large shopping mall, like one of the food store shopping malls, and you'll see that the parking lot's 2 or 3 times or 4 times, 5 times as big as the building. This isn't like that. We're going to probably have about an acre and a half of parking. There are ongoing jobs and supply chain things that happen with a large data center like this. Now, in a cloud providing data center, you'll find that about every 3 years to 4 years, technology requires they switch out the servers. It's a big process. There's thousands of servers. During that process, as the servers come out, there are techs that come in all over the country, 6 months maybe to do this. You'll have all kinds of, the restaurants will be full, the hotels will be jammed and so forth. And for certain periods of time, they'll try to do it when you're in your off season, I'm sure, here. But there'll be some traffic boost in waves every 3 to 4 years. There may be some building upgrades, but not much. They're building these data centers centers for very long rides, about approximately, these are 50 or 70-year buildings now that they're looking at and more. Most likely, the building will be a tilt-up concrete construction building. They call it a raised floor data center. It will be 2 stories. There has been questions asked. Are we going to have smokestacks? What are we going to see from the road, and so forth? I suggest you Google Facebook in New Albany, Ohio, and look at the videos, because that is, Facebook wouldn't like to say if I was typical, but it shows you a few things, and I'd like to explain them for you. As part of our arrangement to be approved, we had to agree to a few things. There will be smokestacks, but they'll be internal to the building. You won't see them. And these are smokestacks to generators that are used less than 1% of the time a year, most likely 0.5% a year. And I'd like to explain that. So the building sits next to for reference, a gunite pool trough, okay? The trough runs the entire length of the building, and within that trough are the generators and the fuel sources. That's it, right within that one area, all fully contained. This isn't something we're making up. This is an industry standard. They do it all over the country. The building itself will be approximately 50 feet tall, depending on the final design, if it's 2 stories. If it's 1 story, it's going to be approximately 30 feet tall. On top of that, there'll be a short parapet wall. Any venting for anything that goes on, air conditioning or anything else, goes through that and is not seen from any of the roadways. It sits on the roof. Therefore, there are no solar panels on the roof because all the mechanicals end up on the roof. I put in to the Groton agreement and 2 things that weren't in the Groton agreement. One was the Wallingford sound attenuation parcel. Important stuff. Towns across the country, most of them had never asked for it, but as people learn more and more and go forward and forward, Wallingford had a study done. So I took the exact language from the study and we put in their host fee agreement from the GOT-Space contract. It's public record. You can do this, and we put it into the Groton agreement. So basically, this is based off sound attenuation from Route 95. We know there's sound on 95 and it's not going to stop. So the goal is to keep it at sound attenuation levels there. Part of this process will require some type of a structure, maybe a crane, and you can read it yourself, and it shows that you have a certain sound decibel level and so forth, and we try to keep it at a particular level based on the sound of the highway and the nearest ambient sound source. And there are ways to adjust this by using particular sound attenuation measures on the roof. It's done in many places in the country. That's the sound piece. Once we pass this legislation, I want to tell you, in case you don't know, it passed with 91% of the House voting in favor and 85% of the voting members of the Senate. 1 was out and 1 had to abstain. So 85% of the voting members of the Senate voted for this bill. At the very last hour of the very last day of the legislature, a piece of legislation popped up, and it's going to come up again this year. And it was DECD asking for very specific changes for environmental. I was not against, and we should never be against, those particular changes that they had. And those were state standard regulatory tie-ins for emissions. They also tied in 7 or 8 options for energy efficient buildings. We agreed to that. I took those components of that and I put those components in the Groton agreement. By the way, they're industry standards anyway. So what we're trying to do is put together an agreement with the town, who's been very responsive, and we're trying to formulate the agreement so it makes it attractive for a data center company, and I'm talking a large data center operator, to come into the town of Groton and be a good neighbor. You'll see, if you look at some of these videos that are online, when they did the New Albany, Ohio expansion. Everyone from the governor to the local economic director to the mayor to the employees of the are in the video, and you'll get a good feel for how this thing works. It's a really interesting process. There's a lot of outreach programs to schools. There's a lot of local community involvement in many projects at communities' request. They really do get involved in communities. In New England here, we have a very, small availability of land. We don't have deserts, we don't have plains, we don't have those things, but we still are going to require a very high level of connectivity as the future goes on, and that's why I brought this forward as I have. I think my 15 minutes is up.
He's the time man.
Okay. So I'm open to questions, but please take a good look at that article.
Tom, thank you very much. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up for questions. I believe we have mics on either side of the room, and they'll come over and do it. And also, we're going to alternate in with Zoom as questions appear to make sure everyone gets equal voice. So the first one I have on my list is Michael Blood. Page right over here. No. Here.
I don't have a question. I'd just like to say I represent Local 777 Plumbers and Pipe Fitters. I live here in Groton, and I'd be more than happy to work on this job. That's just my feelings about it. I've read into it and looked into it. I do understand the conservation type things. If you're true to your word and you're going to work with that, then I'm fine with that. Thank you.
We have signed project labor agreements with the unions in the state.
Thank you, Michael. If we really would like questions, and I'd say we appreciate the feedback, but anyone else? So the next I have, do we have one over here?
Yes. A question from Zoom. What are the environmental impacts of the proposed data center? What are the health concerns, specifically EMF, radiation, thermal, radio frequency, and visible light radiation?
Wow. Okay, that's a big question.
Oh, Alyssa from CTPTAC.
And what is that? Okay. Are we taking questions from Groton residents or from anybody in the planet, or do we know?
We didn't specifically ask for Groton residents. These are just questions that are on the Zoom.
Okay, so happy to answer it. Okay, it's going to be a long answer. It's going to take about 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm going to have to take each one of those individually with yes or no's. Okay, so I'll have to ask. I don't have the question in front of me. So ask me the question and give me the first part of it, please.
What are the environmental impacts of the proposed data center? And then secondarily, what are the health concerns? For example, EMFs, radiation.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
So environmental impacts. Let's start at the beginning. We're going to take trees down to build the data center. We are going to bring in water and sewer underground. We are going to run underground and above ground power lines in parallel to the highway at this point, but we don't have our final report back. We are working, or the utility is working with Eversource for interconnects and so forth, and we should have those reports back, momentarily. It will run parallel up there. It will be away from most of the population up in that area. Some of it will be underground, especially probably to start. The first part of it will be underground, not transmission lines underground because it's too heavy to do that. It has to be smaller loads, but we're working with them, and we won't have that particular part of that answer quite yet. Electromagnetic, yes, and what was the next one?
EMFs, radiation, thermo.
Radiation. There is no radiation coming from a data center. It's not a nuclear power plant. Go ahead.
Thermal or radio frequency?
There won't be any radio frequencies except the frequencies to turn on the lighting systems on the data center inside and outside or so forth. These are very, very contained, very high security, biometric, infrared protected buildings. They're going to be fully fenced off. There'll be 24-hour security at the gate. They will know, and there'll be multiple security overlays in different states that will know if anyone tries to get near the data center building itself. Very high security. priority. Go ahead.
And also visible light radiation. I think they're referring to light pollution.
Okay, so this is right next to 95, where there's an awful big amount of light pollution. We can leave no lights on the building. No one's requesting a sign of any type at this point. There will be some emergency lighting, certainly. There will be probably some lighting, motion type lighting. But I mean, in the most critical areas, bollards could be used. I mean, this building doesn't get lit up. It's a flat concrete building. Again, go online and take a look at what a data center looks like. They don't light these up at night.
All right, next question.
Okay, Chad Brault.
Yeah, mine wasn't actually a question. It was just, I represent the laborers union, and I am strongly in favor for this project.
Thank you, Chad.
The next was a comment that the diesel generators usually have monthly testing.
That's absolutely right. The diesel generators will be turned on monthly, and they will run to make sure that they work. They will be run in times of power outages. They come on in a matter of minutes or less. In the interim, there is a uninterrupted power supply, which is a battery set in between. They don't last long because the data center requires a lot of energy. So there is a battery set to hold the load that comes on. It actually is always on. And then the diesel generator would come on for a period of time, and then it gets shut off in the event of a power. But as far as testing goes, yes, there will be testing, minimal testing. These generators and the utility company can tell you are very expensive to run. You don't want to run them any more than you possibly have to. Yes.
Thank you. And that question was from Rob Bunger.
And I have Peter Swift.
Thank you. Excuse my back. Sounds like your business is going to be quite profitable, which is good for the state and the town, tax-wise. My question is, how big of a personnel is it going to take to build this building?
Well, with all the supply chain issues and things we're having now, I'm told by our construction consultants, which are the largest data builders in the world, we have standing calls every Friday with them, they're estimating in this location that it would take between 1,700 to 2,000 people. They tell me right now that they have only 1,000 available qualified companies, including concrete, master electricians, and so forth in the region, and they're trying to ramp up. They see this coming, and they see this coming, by the way, by the end of this quarter of this year, end of Q1.
So if you're short of people, we can put the word out and bring some in. And one more question is, once the building's up and you turn on the lights, you turn on the electricity, how many people will work at this building?
Well, it depends on this. So if we're working with a particular person, that may take an entire building at 500,000 square foot footprint. In that case, there might be 250 people there, approximately. If we break this up into two side-by-side buildings, one is a co-location and one is a cloud compute, then in that case, there might be 160 approximately, but those are the numbers. And those includes all of the jobs around the clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, a question from Bill Grant. How much water will be used on a daily basis?
I can't give you the exact water number, but these are air-conditioned buildings. Now, there's something very unique in the Northeast, and the reporter that you're going to hear about shortly that has done some deep diving, the one that did the Connecticut Examiner article, is also in contact with a person named Gene Goddard, and I find him, I bumped into a mentor. So during my process about 2.5 years ago, I was asked to go to Hartford Metro Alliance. I don't know if you know what this is, but it's currently about 108 companies that contribute a substantial amount of money, and this is an organization that's set up to promote business in the state of Connecticut. Insurance companies are there, but also a lot of other types of companies, manufacturing, and they will support and have supported data center building. So I was asked to go speak to them when I was going around to see all the agencies, and I met someone named Gene Goddard. Gene Goddard, when I went in, I said, you know, some of these data companies are saying that it's a $600 million build and it's more and it's less. I said, I found it that there's a problem because I looked at a project in Minnesota where Google went to Minnesota, of all places, right? And there's a coal plant servicing the data center and so forth. And I started to get into it. He said, stop. He said, that's my project. So here's the real story. Gene Goddard lives in Minnesota, works for Hartford Metro Alliance, and he's an extremely bright man. He went to Dallas for 2 months and convinced them to bring a data center of 1 million square feet, Google, to there. He still is in touch with these folks. He's got a great relationship with them. Now, the reason it's important is because that coal plant was picked up by the press. It wasn't good information. There's 300 megawatts, like we may have some here in wind, that they're blending in, and there's also a nuclear plant across the river, and there are 2 coal plants, actually. So there was redundant power on redundant power. Does Minnesota need that data center? They were taking advantage and reserving a lot of power that they need and had an abundance of in that region, so he put that deal together. He is a very big supporter of this. He's seen it firsthand. He's been a big supporter. He's at Hartford Metro Alliance, and we hope to keep him close as we move forward with the project. But there's an example of where he figured out regulation, taxes, cost of utility, and fiber. And why he was there in 2 months in Dallas, working with the siting council, they had to keep going back to the state level to work out the same things we're working out here in the agreement with the town. So what we've been told is Connecticut's a very difficult, I'm just getting off the question, I'm going right back to it. They're told Connecticut's very difficult to get regulation. So we have JV, joint venture arrangements, but we have to complete the task. And the task is to pull all the pieces together, get conservation approval, inland wetlands, and so forth. Sorry.
So I think the question is the water consumption.
Water consumption is minimal. Water consumption is minimal. It's air-conditioned building. I'm just going to give you a gross example. Tennessee Valley Authority uses millions of gallons a day to service 2 Facebook centers. We don't have it here. We know we don't have it here. We have no intention of using that water for that. I mean, the basic water, it's an air-conditioned system. In the wintertime, by the way, we can even shut off, and they do this in the Minnesota Google plant, they can actually shut down the AC and use a fan system, and then the air is humidified and so forth, dehumidified, and it's put through the system. So we hope even to cut back and make it more efficient there. Sorry.
No, that's right. Thanks, Tom. Joseph Toner.
Hi, Tom. Great presentation. Quick question. If everything goes through in the permit-wise, when do you anticipate construction starting?
Well, it depends on the length of time it takes to get through the permitting. So if we were to set a goal of 5 to 6 months after. Now remember, we're not looking for a construction plan building. We're looking for an envelope plan, which is basically a line on paper that say we'll build a building in this spot. So that's a little bit faster. But yes, I would say 5 to 6 months if we have all of our approvals in place.
Okay, thank you. I just like to say this. So we appreciate responsible development, which we don't see. We see these Amazons come into the state of Connecticut, and with the pollution and the environmental impact that they have, the $16 an hour jobs without benefits, right? Bring construction workers in from out of state for substandard wages. This development doesn't have any of that, and on behalf of the building trades, we'd like to thank you for coming in and making sure that people in the community are being represented and paid fairly on your project. So thanks for coming in, and great presentation.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Joseph.
So a question from Lauren Gauthier. What would the taxes for this property have been without the statutory exemption for a 20-year term? And how were the $200 million and $400 million figures reached?
Okay, so let's do the $200 and $400 million piece. So those were numbers that the state of Connecticut worked through. So we set up a grid of all of the incentives nationwide, and then we tried to figure out what we could do and where we could do it and how it would fit in, so that Connecticut would be at least a possible choice to put a data center in. And during this process, I had higher numbers, higher thresholds for investment. The state thought that that was a little bit, they cut it down a little bit, and $200 million allows a full investment of $200 million. This is verified, certified. You have to file for the tax forms up at the state through DECD. They track it. They track all your expenses. Dollars, and this is a bonded deal, so once you start, you're guaranteed to hit it. Once you get to that level, you have 20 years of no sales use real estate taxes. 20 years. If you spend $400 million, you have 30 years. So it's a guaranteed investment in this town of either $200 million or $4, but it really won't work like that. What'll happen is a smaller data building might be somewhere in the vicinity of $300 million, for example. And a larger data building might be an example, a very fair example of over $600 million. So to answer the other question about what the taxes would be, they would be substantially more. Just so everybody knows, the reason the tax incentives are in place is because they do not come to the state if they can't make it work. Why can't they make it work? 3.5 cent power, 20-year guarantees in the state of Texas. Other areas, 5 and 6 cent power. Okay, and so they have much shorter incentives. Texas is 10 with a 5-year option for 15. But if you look at a spreadsheet and put it over 30 years, they're saving $150 million over what it would cost here, for example, depending on the size of the building, because they have inexpensive power. Our power, as we all know, is the most expensive in the United States, or it was this past year. I haven't looked yet this year. It's too depressing. But and Rhode Island is second, and the Northeast is really stuck. So so we had to make an incentive so that the industry would say, hey, look, they're really trying to make this thing work. And we brought power into national market levels now, which is about, around 6.5 to 7 cents a kilowatt on a very large economy of scale buy. Go ahead.
I think I'm up. Jim Furlong.
Thank you. You want to hold that, or shall I? I can. Okay. I had expected that this briefing would last longer. 2.5 minutes is really not enough time to discuss this, but I will try to chisel down what I was going to say. On February 8th, Mr. Quinn, you gave an ultimatum to the town, said, accept my program or I walk. 2 weeks. Then when that was not accepted very happily, you said, okay, 4 weeks. I think this was disrespectful to the town, and would we expect more consideration from you in the future? We're going to have to work with you for 20 or 30 years. The idea of doing something in 2 weeks on a 30-year plan, it seems to me to be very strange. I have a couple other questions. Why do you need 380? Why do you need 380 acres if you only use, say, 10 acres per plot for buildings? I'd like to know why Montville failed after 3 years and is now in a very nasty legal battle. We were told by the town attorney on Tuesday night that the people who are involved here are very litigious. I don't think we necessarily want to get into a lot of litigation. Finally, New Albany, Ohio is very neat, very flat, unlike the land that you want here. I don't see how you can flatten it out with making any money at all, but it's very neat. It's huge. It's a huge thing, and it's completely out of character with this area. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to respond. Your words were a little bit out of context from what I asked the town. I did not give them a solid ultimatum, do it or not do it. I asked them to do it because we have interest to come to the town. I don't want the town to miss an opportunity. This is about opportunity for all of us, including us. It's a big opportunity for the town. There is a very short time, and you will see data centers in Connecticut in a very short amount of time. We have this from people at the state level that are getting calls. We've heard this through construction company, a very large construction company with offices in this state. I've been in their offices in New York multiple times. They're coming. So we're trying to get this done so that we don't miss the boat. There is the parcel we're talking about is 172 acres, sir. 172. Hyperscale data centers, if you'd like to look it up, everything's on Google these days. You can verify anything. You can fact check any of this. They're looking for 100 to 120 for privacy, 100 to 120 acre parcels. This is not a typical desert data or a Minnesota parcel where you're on a prairie or a desert. I said that at the beginning. Nonetheless, there are only so many pieces of industrial land that abut the fiber line that have the utility available, and that's why we're talking to you tonight. It's not a mistake that we're sitting here. And it was a long, steady process for us to get to this process of elimination, to get all of those parts put together so that we could be able to present something like this. The next thing in Montville, I never had any interest in Montville. I didn't have any shares in Montville. I didn't have a non-disclosure agreement. I didn't have a contract. I was paid as a consultant. I went in and did a job. Those partners are arguing over 600 acres of land. I have nothing to do with that, nor did I ever have any decision to buy land, sell land, build a gas plant, or anything else. So just because two people are in an argument somewhere else has nothing to do with me, no matter what anyone has. I haven't been named in that suit. So please don't tie me to anything that I'm not responsible for.
Sir, weren't you president?
Let me finish. I wrote these down so I could respond to you. Everybody else in the world may be litigious. I'm not litigious. I am not. You can look me up, and the town of Groton's already done that. Please take the time to look up the other entity that's here, and you'll get a better idea of what's going on.
I've done a lot.
Okay, I'm glad you have. Flatland, New Albany, Ohio. You're right. Do you know why they went to New Albany, Ohio, folks? Because the fiber line goes from Chicago to Richmond. Someone else already paid for the fiber highway. So they followed the line down and they said, wait a minute, what town will work with us? And if you go talk to the mayor in New Albany, Ohio, please write him, email him, talk to their economic director, write the governor's office. Take a look and see what's going on there. They've had a wonderful relationship out there. There aren't any pollution scares and electricity overhead line scares for cancer. There's none of that, okay? It's very contained. It's very well done. And we're going to do the same job, likely with the same construction people, likely with one of those same companies that are already there right here in Groton, if you let us do it.
Question?
From Susan Dean Shinbrot, who are the financial backers, and are there any signed agreements with users?
Okay, first of all, every person we talk to, we probably have 60 NDAs out, non-disclosure agreements. We can't get into any of the financing aspects of this. There are interested, very large private equity and debt lenders. We've been approached by a number of them. We have a couple solid in mind when it comes time to build a data center. But remember the process. I told you at the beginning. JV means joint venture agreement. We may come into it and be part of this operation for 30 years or 20 years, however long that we work with the tax. It's a tax legislation. However, if a hyperscaler comes in, they're going to fund it themselves. Once this project starts, I want people to be clear. I got a lot of questions about what happens if it goes bust and belly up. Once this project starts, there's bonding for 100% of the construction. Every road that's touched, sewer, water. These guys that got up tonight, I think, are involved in jobs. Every piece of the job is bonded, and the financing for the job to build it out in full is bonded. It's an industry standard. Again, Google it, you can check. Bonding is critical to the entire process. So you can be very assured, once it gets approved and they start, they're going to finish it, and they're going to be hooking up the fiber lines and so forth. We've been working with 3 different fiber providers at this point, including the fiber provider that works with 95% of the state at this point about this particular location, main trunk hookups and so forth. I'm sorry to babble on. Go ahead.
That is fine.
Second part of that question was customers that you've signed up.
No one signs a customer up. I can tell you we're working with a company as an operator. So we have 2 options on the site. At this point today, we may have 10 more tomorrow or none. But right now, we have a couple of options. One of the operators has 8,000 current tenants nationwide, 8,000. So we're going to get some tenants, and we're going to get them fast. What they're looking for is to get by the regulation, taxes, cost of utility, and fiber problems, and that's what I'm here to solve, to finish our agreement.
Okay. I'm reading handwriting here. Eugenia Villagra? There we are.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Eugenia Villagra. I guess you don't need my address and all that stuff. We're not at a town council meeting. Anyway, I'm going to be speaking to the issue of environmental impacts of data centers. Global warming is the existential crisis of our times, and unless we do something about it, our future, our children's future, and our grandchildren's future. In response, Groton wisely passed a resolution of commitment to address climate change, resilience, and sustainability as a central management principle for all actions of town government. That's a quote. That's the resolution that was passed, and it was passed recently. The objective is to lessen future impacts by lowering the town's contributions to climate change, not raise them. This data center proposal is a big step in the wrong direction. Why? Because data centers contribute considerably to global warming. They use a lot of electricity and generate a lot of heat. We are concerned that the data center will create a heat island effect or cause the microclimate in the area to change during extreme climatic or weather events. How do you plan to reduce your carbon footprint? To what level? A zero net carbon footprint? The Holstein property, with its forested hills and bedrock ridges, will make building a data center there very difficult. Will you be leveling these hills and blasting rocky ridges? How will that impact the property's sensitive and environmentally important wetlands? Wetlands enhance water quality, control erosion, maintain stream flows, sequester carbon, and provide habitat to at least 1/3 of all threatened and endangered species. Perhaps this is one of many reasons why experts have questioned the advisability of building data centers in the Northeast, and why there are currently none along the coast between New York and Boston. The 17-acre parcel owned by the town that you and the town are contemplating swapping is some of the only flat, dry land in the area. I don't know if that's still on the table, the swap.
Really, I appreciate that, but is there a question for him?
Yes, it's coming. Yes.
Could we get to the question? That's all.
I was just wanting to talk about the fact that that is publicly owned land, that there is a disc golf course there, that there are neighbors that enjoy walking their dogs there. And I know that there are a number of people who would not appreciate that swap taking place. Now, they also would be concerned about the noise, the heat, the air quality issues that usually accompany a data center. That is unless you plan to build a green data center. Are you planning to minimize rather than maximize the building footprint, to minimize clear cutting? That's extremely important.
Okay, so the question is, what are you going to do to limit your carbon footprint, I think is the way to sum it all up, or? because there's got to be a question in there somewhere.
Will you be using green building materials? Are you considering sustainable landscaping? Will you be using catalytic converters on your diesel-fueled backup generators to reduce emissions? Green data centers call for the elimination of vibrations by avoiding sites close to railroads, major highways, and construction sites. You will be building very close to I-95.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You've done some good homework. There's an awful lot to respond to, so we'll talk about a few things. We're not swapping land. That was talked about earlier. I'm just going to jump up and point here so you can see. You're welcome to come up and look at it yourself. This, if you actually refer to that one, the sound blind spot. Okay. Okay. Well, you don't. There is a line here. I'm sorry you can't see. I'm going to put my pen here. This parcel here on this side, I'm trying to get out of the way. This piece is the donation piece. We've pledged to give at least 50 acres. There probably will be more acreage than that. It starts right here and it goes over. Part of the agreement is to make sure that we leave access off of this road and attaches to the conservation piece that you have ghost homes, I guess, down here. And so to leave that all as one piece that connects. This is the piece that will be developed. We're not swapping, we're donating. And then we hope to purchase this area. There's a piece up here that's, there's a piece up there that's 17 acres in this area. Most of that 17 acres.
One on the white one over there. Everybody can see it when you see it. We can't.
Oh, yeah, okay, good. Okay, so I didn't even know this was here. So I can't use this near the, yeah, I'll just speak loudly because I don't want to get in feedback. See if this one will work. Okay, I'm going to go on this side. So this is the acreage piece here with some smaller parcels. They're all included. This is the 17-acre piece. The bulk of this piece would be set back from the road. In other words, the buildings wouldn't be out here. We're going to provide an envelope plan. We're not trying to put the buildings over here. We're trying to put the building here next to the state area, away from the vernal pool that's here, and we're trying to put it right about here. These are two small state pieces. We haven't asked the state yet, but we know, according to our engineer, the history is they were left over from highway construction. We think we can get those if we need them, but we really don't need them. If we put that building here, we have fiber connectivity right here. This piece, this area, is the donation piece here. This is the sheep farm, so it'll be connected to the sheep farm area, and this will be this. And I've been doing permitting for most of my adult life. It's my opinion as a developer permitter that the data center up here is going to be the least of almost any uses you can think of for this industrial parcel. Under the zoning, we know the setbacks. We know you can clear a lot of this, certainly multiples of what we intend to clear. So it's a good choice for the site, we think. This 17-acre piece, we think we can put right here, that would be the building envelope area. That way, we're far enough away from the water source stuff. We're hundreds and hundreds of feet away. And it's a nice, clean attachment. And you're absolutely right about data centers being near highways. You are, and railroads. But in this case, there's only so many options, and the connectivity is required. And we had our construction company check the site, and they gave us a couple-page viability study, and that's been sent on already. So it's kind of not semi-approved, quarter-approved at that point as a site if we can get the envelope area right there. I have other notes for your questions. I'm just going to come back over here.
Thanks for that.
Okay,
I think the basic
I
question
just want to
was-
finish your question. So the generators. There are different levels of generators. I said earlier about how I adopted stuff that was proposed by the Deep Commissioner, by Katie Dykes. It was proposed that we do Tier 2, Tier 4 generators. What does that mean? Tier 2 is a backup generator. It's separately permitted as backup only, and Tier 4 is for peak shaving. Peak shaving is done in all municipal utilities. Almost every major hotel in the state peak shaves. Universities peak shave in the state. You have to take a look at this. Peak shaving occurs everywhere. major employers in this town peak shave. They have permits for it. You can go online and look. You can call Deep and ask for all the permits that are available for peak shaving. So peak shaving is not only allowed, everyone has permits for it locally. So in this particular case, we're going to have Tier 4 generators, which are the most expensive. You asked about catalytic converters. These are the cleanest possible generators. The ones we're looking at, and I can't tell you that we're deciding on anything because it's not going to be my eventual decision. It'll be engineers and data center operator decisions. But Kohler makes an extremely efficient generator at this point. Some of the engine blocks in old generators are 20 years old, and they just keep putting fancy electronics on it, but it's the same old engine, not Kohler. They have a whole new engine set up to be able to run these things during. And don't forget, less than 0.5% of the year. And it's going to model when the town peak shaves. That's when we're going to peak shave. It's likely going to be in the summer for a few hours. Then we're going to test it. Our studies showed that last year there would have been 12 hours of peak shaving for the year, and it would have happened at late August and early July. You want to ask another question?
What is peak shaving?
Peak shaving is when you turn the generators on. It's 2 times you turn on the generators, only 2. The generators, just so everyone knows, they're off all the time. We're not creating electricity with generators except if we have a power outage. They're going to come on, except if we're peak shaving. So how the peak shaving works, and I've explained this to other towns, I'll do it as quickly as I can in 30 seconds. You're buying electricity. The electricity costs X every single day. You're paying, your formula for your next year's bill is based on what you're drawing this year. That's how it's done. So what we have to do is, when there are spikes in the cost of electricity, you may not know this, but the electricity goes up like many multiples of times during those, we'll call them brownout periods. So we're actually doing something that works for the utility too. We're coming off the grid so that the utility price doesn't spike. We're off the grid, self-generating, and it's only for a couple of hours or an hour or two, and it usually happens during July, August, right around that time when it's the hottest possible days. You're not going to be peak shaving in the wintertime. Okay? So you're just taking the peaks, which are the highest parts of the graph, off to save future cost of electricity. It helps the grid actually to do it. Okay, Tier 4 generators, green buildings. Yes, it's in the legislation. We took the DECD sent me something with DEEP last year, and I agreed to it in writing with them. It didn't pass in the legislation, but we put it in to Groton's thing. And there are a number of green buildings. I was on with the town today about, they had 7 or 8 of them. The town thought 2 or 3 were better than others, and the town is right. They are better. I'll agree to those 3 or 2 or 1 if they want, whatever they need to have. But it's good to have some options, and that wasn't my language. That came directly from the state. We covered swap, we covered green, Tier 4. I'm sure you have more.
The question, yeah, we got the next one, but it was
So there are a number of questions still about how much water use is expected over a year's period of time, and I'll try to sum up a few of the questions.
Sure.
Basically, how much water does one typical use, and is there a danger of depletion of our local supply or any form of contamination to our wells? So that's kind of one vein. And there's also some questions about seeing that the typical water system use for a data center can range between 80,000 gallons a day to 1 to 3 million gallons a day.
Right.
And is that all based on the water, the cooling system design versus what you're doing?
Yeah, they're not running sinks and flushing with 80 million gallons or whatever. Yeah, that is typical. So in the southwest, in the southeast of the country, they use that quantity of water today in data centers. It's a fact. We're going to air condition the buildings. We're not going to have water use. We're not using a closed loop system. We're air conditioning the buildings. The ductwork makers are going to have an awful lot of work. So yeah, we're air conditioning buildings. And use will be for, you know, we'll have to provide the town and the state these uses. Will be all within regulation. We're not going to, you know, this isn't going to be a drain on the town water supply. This is air conditioning systems. So we're replacing the water with electricity, basically, to run the AC systems.
Another part of that was possible pollution to the water, the wells, and
Okay, so a real quick thing, again, I ask you to verify this, go to Google, and the reason I tell you this is because there's a lot of videos about some buildings, and there's no videos at all about others. But if you look at the New Albany building, it's a rectangle, it's got a very high wall. If you just look at it from Google Earth, or you can go online and look at the videos, they have built a fully enclosed gunite pool around, high-sided, probably as high as these walls are, all the way around the room, and it runs down. And in that spot are the generators, and there are vertical tanks, different sizes, for diesel fuel, depending on how long they can operate. And it's all about 20-year power outages, and it's all based on that particular company's study of the region. They want to know how much you need to store. So they store that next to the generator, all protected. So nothing leaves the site. It's fully contained from the beginning. Everything is in a box. The town brought up batteries. You won't store batteries outside. Of course not. No one's storing batteries outside. The insurance company wouldn't allow it. And these buildings are well insured, obviously. There won't be any diesel storage outside of the containment area, which is within the building. You've heard this term double bladder storage and all that. This is better than all that. This is the bulletproof method of doing it, and all the data centers are doing it. You just have to take a look and see. What else did I miss?
I think the basic one was on the carbon footprint objectives.
Okay, carbon footprint. Well, here's what we have for carbon footprint. All state and federal regulations are going to be followed. We're not looking for the state has recently had a 2030 mandate to be carbon neutral at a certain point. The state's just recently backed off that. We're going to still have a green building, and we're going to do everything to state and federal EPA standards across the board. As far as green goes, yes, we're going to use one of 8 different building designs under the green plan. It's in the agreement already, and we're going to use the most efficient gen sets that you can find, and we're going to air condition. So we're trying to do all those things as green as you can make it in this region.
okay, I have a good amount of people still on this list here, so I really would please, if you have a question, ask your question, and maybe Tom can sum up.
I'll show you. Just give me a thing. Yep.
So Stephanie Bilzer? Yes. Go over here.
Thank you. I don't know if you want to do this call and response, or should I just read out what I've got?
Whatever you think.
Okay. Well, first off, my understanding is that the site's 172 acres. And
I am sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry. My understanding is the site's 172 acres, and you're going to use, by my calculations, 7.5 acres?
I can't give you the exact number, but it's
Well,
roughly 6 acres for the building, plus the roads and a parking lot, yes.
Okay, so say 10 acres, just roughly. So that's going to leave about 160 acres. Is there going to be a conservation easement so the rest of it can't be developed?
No, what it'll be is wholly owned by the data center company, whatever that name is. It's going to be wholly owned by that. It will not be likely fenced out to the property line. It'll be fenced around the building. Someone asked about, and this falls into your question. There's enough clearing around the building for security, and there's very tall fence and biometric infrared security throughout. So the rest will be left in a natural state. I can't imagine you couldn't walk through there, but the data center necessary operational area will be fenced.
Okay, but outside of that, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of property. Is that going to be subject to a conservation easement so it won't be developed?
No. We're giving and the rest is going to be owned by the data center. I can assure you that there are certain things that cannot happen based on, depending on the size of the building we have. So if we get a large-scale user, that's going to be it for at least 10 or 15 years. Should they want to expand, they have to come right back to the town and ask to expand, and the town will decide. But I'll tell you, at that size, very unlikely.
Okay, now, this property's going to have, access will be on the Flanders Road?
It's on Flanders, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Will a traffic study be done?
No. I don't think so. Look, we'll do a traffic study, but it's 80 cars spread over 3 shifts. At the most, it's 120 cars, so it's 40 cars every 8 hours. I think other towns have, no one else has asked for one because it's so few eventual jobs. There will be a lot of jobs when you're in the building part, and that's when the traffic is going to be, tough.
That's what I'm more concerned about, when the building's going on.
Yeah, and there'll be, and I'll look at all data center builds online. There'll be, multiple police details and all that stuff that'll be out there, and there'll probably be some roadway expansion there, whether it's temporary or not. And the sweeps will be so they can bring in the trucks to build the data center and the concrete and so forth.
Okay.
The good news is it's right off the highway, so they can come directly off the highway and come right in,
Well, they can't, there's no exit there.
Well, you got to go around a little bit, but it's close enough to the highway. We can put a ramp in.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
okay. How much power will this pull? I mean, how many?
The power is going to be between, it depends on who comes and what the internal configuration of the building is going to be. It could pull between 100 megawatts and 250 megawatts.
And you've got a commitment from Groton Utilities and Eversource that they can handle
They
that?
make me sign NDAs, so I can't talk about that, but we have a sufficient power by the time a building would get built to be able to service the building.
Okay, and my final question is as far as the data center itself, you've been talking a lot about that data centers need to go into New England and so on. I just don't understand the why of it. I mean, if the data center, if Google's got a massive data center in Minnesota and Facebook's got one in Arizona and we all use Google and Facebook, what difference does it make if the data center's 5 miles from here, 500 miles from here, or 2,000 miles?
That's an excellent question. And the article that I just asked people to look, you should really read it. It's from Dr. Lin Zong at Yale. If you just take a look at that article, you'll see why the latency is so important to everything that we do.
Okay.
Latency is round-trip delay to the next place that has what they call a server hotel. So we have none out here. So we're kind of in the data desert out this way. So
Okay.
you'll take a look at that.
I guess I'll look at that because right now I don't hear an answer to the so what question.
The answer is this. We don't have enough connectivity to have any of these things that we all want to have in our life, all the connectivity issues. Driverless cars, you can't run one here. They don't have enough connectivity. You need a base for driverless cars. I can get into explanations. I have them all. Austin's doing 500 white poles around the city right now, and they're going to have a driverless car network in Austin. First one in the world. They're going to have it all driverless, okay? You need 6 data centers to run that. We don't even have 1. You can look up this. It's all online, folks. Just take a look at Austin connectivity.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
So a little bit of a statement. Boston does have data centers, contrary to what Mr. Quinn says, that there's several in Somerville. Are you aware of those?
Okay. So there are 44 data centers in the region. They are very small. Some are the size of this room or half the size of this room. We're talking about acres of data centers. We're talking about 500, 800,000 square feet. We're talking about cloud providers. These are not cloud providers. These are not Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple, or any of the major colo companies. These are small proprietary data centers. These data centers in Massachusetts don't have the incentives that we have here. Groton may get a big benefit because some of those tenants that lease in those centers would be likely also to come here because it's a better deal for them. So there are many small ones. Now some are 44. One is for a particular insurance company in Hartford. One is for UBS. And they're proprietary data centers. They're not helping the community. They're helping their own business. That's the difference between those two. So she's right. There are data centers, but there are not cloud providing data centers or edge computing data centers. Go ahead.
Bev Milbauer.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Well, a couple of people have already stolen my thunder. Okay, I guess the only question I'll address is, The issue I have is with you guys being gifted with no property taxes on this facility for 20 years or more, and how that's going to impact our tax base. The rest of us have to pay taxes every year, and you guys won't have to. And the same thing with the electricity rate being discounted for you. We don't get a discount on our electricity. So how can you explain that to me and have it make sense for me?
Okay, I'll try to do that and be brief. So the taxes were exempted by the state to attract data centers, but we're providing a partial replacement for those taxes through a municipal fee hosting agreement of $1.5 million per year for one of these buildings. So there are taxes coming back to the town. I don't know what the town does with that. I don't know if it goes onto the grand list. I don't know if it goes into a different pocket, but it comes back to the town. So that's one thing. Also, the municipal utility company gets a profit. Why would a data center get a discount? We're going to pay for the upgrades to get the power to the site. The utility company's going to buy the power in the wholesale market. They're going to mark it up to us and make a profit, and the rate holders get the profit. It's a municipal utility. So you're making money on it. I don't know why that hasn't been more clear in the press. I just don't know. But that's how this works, and you can vet that through the folks in the town and the utility company. Thank you.
What will the wattage capacity be?
The what?
Wattage.
What will the wattage capacity be?
Megawatts will be anywhere from 100 to 250 or 60 megawatts.
Alex Ollendorf.
Hi, my name is Alex Oldorf, neighbor here on Flanders Road. So it looks to me like you said it's going to be between the two red triangles and the green town space. Am I getting that right for the possible buildings?
Somewhere up there on that end, we have to have the final engineering done, but yes, you're right.
Does that mean all the utilities, water, sewer, and power will be pulled from Flanders Road? Because if that's the case, then the
No, the
infrastructure will.
engineer's here, and I don't know if we want to spend any time with that, but we're not really doing zoning things. We're not working through the zoning things right now, but Jim, can you just throw in a word there?
So in answer to your question, no, all of the utilities are not going to be coming solely from Flanders Road. There'll be utilities that come from both sides. So there will be some improvements to the Flanders Road utilities, but there will also be some connections made that don't currently exist. Sewer is the primary one that comes to mind. Water does exist in Flanders Road, but water will also be looped. Yes, I'm aware of that. So we will be required by the regulatory process to interconnect the water from where we're going to uptake it to where where the loop would be closed out. So we'll be required to close the loop from Flanders Road down to North Road, Route 117. So we'll be creating a utility corridor through there, which will service our needs, but will also service the needs of future development in the community.
Couldn't hear that?
Don't feel for them. Don't feel for them. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. So I guess my second question is the access roads. It looks like it's going to rely on kind of owning that green space to put in roads to get to facility. If so, is buying that really kind of holding up the project? Can you build roads from Flanders, or is it going to be coming from
No, we can build that without the 17 acres, but it's better, we think, for all involved. Don't forget, most of that 17 acres will be in the setback area, which means it's not going to be built on. They're just going to take a sliver of the back, or a slice of the back, probably about a portion of it. I don't know the exact number of the engineers here.
But a road could possibly go through it just to get to the building.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
The full-time jobs that you had mentioned, are those full-time jobs or contract and/or temporary?
No, these are full-time, high-paying jobs. Most of the jobs, the jobs are starting with the manager on down. The jobs are in the $60 to $70 to $170,000 range, somewhere in there.
Pam Valari.
Most of my questions have been answered, but I'm thinking of the future. In 20 years, say, you want to expand because this has been so successful. I think this is for the town, maybe. How would that work? Would they have free reign, or would they have to start the whole process again? How would that work?
We can only guess that far out, but let's say there was a 30-year situation. So far, we haven't seen data centers abandoned in the United States. It's the #1 asset class in the entire world. Please Google it. And so they're valuable. Once you have a cutout in a particular area like this, and you're connected to the fiber, and you're reliant on the data center regionally, what is most likely to happen is they'll remodel the entire thing to the standard we can't even imagine 30 years from now, and they'll be bringing new servers in anyway in a cloud computing environment every 3 years or so. So they'll be bringing it up to speed. The physical plant itself, I don't know, but there'll be other requirements, and we know over time the state's going to want better and better quality generators, for example, and different things. So this will be an evolutionary process, and it will be, it'll be some time. But if you look, there haven't been any data center bankruptcies in the U.S. I mean, it's a pretty solid asset class.
I believe that was actually addressed to the town, and from the standpoint of 20 years down the road, what happens then if they want to change things? And I would believe it'd have to come through the same process again, but I don't want to answer for it.
Oh, absolutely. It would be coming through. You'd have to do anything on the site. There's a permit to build a building. We can't do anything else on that site unless we go back to the town to ask, and P&Z would have decision-making authority. But the tax deal does end at the end of 30 years.
Right.
And then whatever the taxes are the taxes to be paid at that point.
It would be good for us if you expanded.
And it would be good for the town. If it's a 20-year deal, it's a great deal.
John, just from the town standpoint, just so we can get there.
Yeah, so just for a little clarity, John Reiner, Director of Planning and Development Services, any approvals on this site have to go through our Planning and Zoning Commission, Inland Wetlands Commission, and if anything gets approved in the near future on this site, if they want to make changes to that in the future, they would have to go back before those same regulatory agencies and get additional approvals to change or expand anything on the site.
Thank you. A question from Zoom.
Yes. Let's see. So this was a clarifying question. So in order to understand what you said earlier, did you say that you came in with a higher offer to the state in DECD, and that DECD asked that you cut that down to the $200 to $400 million range?
I can tell you that some states, it's a complicated answer, and I don't want to go down a big rabbit hole. Some states are $50 million, some are $750 million. I was trying to find a sweet spot that was slightly more, actually, than that number. And the state, through the same math, and they might be quite a bit smarter, especially the DEC director, who's quite a bit smarter than I am, I'm quite sure, has figured out that this was going to be the sweet spot necessary to attract data centers to the state of Connecticut. That's his job, to bring the business in, and he thought I was a little too aggressive, I think, at that. But he's been great to work with. So has Innovations, so has the governor's office, so has the legislature. So yes, they are ready to go.
Okay, thank you. And that was a clarifying question from Lauren Gauthier.
Thank you.
Zell Stever.
Just so you know, this is going to take more than 2.5 minutes.
Well, can I hold you? I'll tell you what. I got a list. Just to be very polite to everyone here, we have a list of people here and on Zoom. And if you want to bring a long thing, I would bring that to the town council.
I will be doing that much longer, in fact. But you've been up here for over an hour with a developer talking about what you're doing. And at least we ought to have the courtesy to get our questions answered. in a timely sort of way.
Then I ask a question and not a statement.
Okay, we'll start. So you think this is the site that you are proposing to build on, correct?
I'm going to cut you off. You know what? This is not an interrogation.
It's a question.
Do you have a question for him to respond to? But you're going to go through a list. I can see what you're doing. We're trying to get everyone here to be able to ask questions and not to take over a position. So ask the question, and then you may sit down, and we'll go to our next question after that. Please.
Okay, you're going to put a 250,000 square foot building on this piece of property. Now I'd like to show you what that looks like. It could go up there on the town property. And I suppose it could go down here. My question to you, Mr. Quinn, have you walked the site?
Yes.
And tell us what the site's like.
Okay. Do you have a question you want to ask?
Yes, I do.
Okay. The site has topography. This is all a planning and zoning thing. Tonight's.
He did. He said yes. He's walked the site. And the question is?
And the question is, what is that site like? Very simple question.
So, but you must have a question there because you're trying to interrogate him on the thing. So please, we're here to ask questions. We have other people to ask questions. Ask the question, relinquish the microphone, and please let's move on.
Excuse me, but the town website said specifically that comment was acceptable at this meeting.
Absolutely.
And so it's not all questions.
The town council asked both the Conservation Commission and the Economic Development Commission to have a forum to be able to have the presentation and have questions. Clearly, it says questions with comments, so we limit it to 2 minutes to allow everyone to have a premise. But it's not to take the stage and make a whole presentation. Simple as that. We have other people to speak also.
Mr. Quinn, when are you going to provide an application to the town of Groton?
When?
Yes.
After the municipal host fee agreement's in place.
Okay.
Then we bring it in.
I don't believe this town can make a decision based upon nothing but a verbal discussion with the town and then a series of news articles. We've learned more about your operation from the news articles than we have from you. We'll just temporarily put that 250,000 square foot building right there in the lot. And the elevation from the road here down to the bottom of that is 60 feet. Are you proposing to fill that?
We're proposing to grade it all out, yes, to get it within the building footprint area. Yes, there's ridges, there's this. This is all engineering. So.
And so you're proposing.
Are we going to get into a complete engineering discussion? By the way, I want to just comment on this. That sticker might be the right square footage or close, but it's not the right shape. So,
well, tell me what the right shape would be.
Okay, here we go.
I'm gonna go on to the next question, John. Could you get one from Zoom, please? Because I'm not here for an interrogation. No. That's not a comment either. That's an interrogation. So, John, please.
Yeah. So, from Zoom, from Hazley Land, do you have an environmental policy in place already? Basically, how can we, as direct neighbors, be guaranteed that no harm will be done to our water wells?
Okay. We've covered a lot of this in bits and pieces. The building is fully contained within its own concrete bunker, and nothing else goes outside of that area. So there will be no leaching, there will be no diesel, there will be no antifreezes, there will be no batteries, there won't be anything out of that footprint. Data centers, again, high asset class, financed. They're not allowed to do any of that anyway in the marketplace. This isn't going to be some kind of a sloppy situation. This is going to be probably one of the best buildings we'll ever see in the region built, as far as size, fire safety, clean operation, least amount of parking, least amount of total footprint that would be allowable on a site that's 173 acres total. Okay.
Christy Rose.
Thank you. So my question is about the utilities. I live smack dab in the middle, right where all those trees are, and water goes on Flanders as far as Ensign and stops. And for 22 years, we've been living in that home. And we're just curious, because that also butts Groton Utilities, which is, the inexpensive water and all that good stuff. But we have a well, and it's just curious if this does happen, and it comes down to Flanders, the access road looks like it's going to be probably within my house range, and the water come up. Is the water going to continue up to where we can hook on and be part of the sewer and pay for, unfortunately we'll have to pay for the water, but it's better than what I've got right now. And is the opportunity for the company to hook us on as for our inconvenience of what's going to be happening with the traffic, which I'll sit on my lawn on a Saturday, you will see 50 cars go by to the transfer station dropping all their crap along the road anyway. So, but my question is the utilities going to continue up Flanders and stop right there at 95, or the neighborhood there where we also lose power almost every day? There's 37 of us that keep getting knocked out. Are we going to be able to have those utilities upgraded as well?
Okay. We will bring in all the utilities that we need to the site at our cost. I don't know until I talk to the town and the engineer about which specific houses the utilities are going to be in front of. I just don't know. But I can find out pretty quickly, and we can address that during the planning and zoning meeting. If you come to that meeting, we can discuss how that's going to be handled, and I'll have a plan. I expect by that time we'll have a plan done that shows exactly where it would come in. But that plan isn't done yet because the legislation requires us to do this first and that second.
Well, where you pointed at it originally, where it might go in the area,
Yep.
that's across the street from where I live. So
Okay. Believe me, we're going to be very sensitive to that, and there will be large setbacks getting back to those buildings.
John.
Skip my Zoom question. I get a little computer issue here.
Joseph Caldazol? Caldazol, okay.
Mr. Quinn, who are you? Who are you? Were you the president of Verdi? As newspaper articles
Who are
have told
you?
I'm Joseph Caldrolo. I am a consultant for Verdi and God Space Data.
You are?
Yes.
Well, we're not going to talk to you tonight because we have attorneys too. You wanted to talk to
No,
attorneys?
you said you're not involved in any litigation. Excuse me.
No, we're not. But are you an attorney?
You are.
Are you an attorney asking me questions?
Excuse me.
Are you an attorney asking me questions?
Excuse me.
You talk to our
What is your
attorney.
question?
He just said he wasn't in litigation.
No.
Now he just says he has attorneys. What does
No,
that
you're
mean?
not going to. You're just a
He's
lawyer.
in
I don't want you to
litigation.
respond to it. Please, we'll go on to the next
Are you
question.
in litigation, sir?
Sir, this is not part of this at all.
Attorney or Jerry Springer, which one are you?
Okay, please, everyone in the audience also, we don't want responses.
He's been rude to this guy. This guy has to
Excuse me, no one's been rude. Everyone's trying to present.
All right.
So
Let's keep going.
Yep.
Let's keep going. Please. No.
You guys are the screamers, not me.
Excuse us, we're just trying to be volunteers for the town to get questions out. John, please.
He shouldn't answer the question.
John, please.
Not right.
Question, please.
Not right.
Sure.
This is being run like a kangaroo court.
It's not a court at all.
So, question from online from Penny Newberry. I'm still confused about why adaptive reuse of existing facilities like the mall is not being or has not been considered.
That's a good question. Adaptive reuse of other properties. It's been tried. Data centers at the hyperscale level aren't doing it. In fact, if you look back at the New Britain data center that has been in the paper for the last 5 years, it keeps raising and raising its head since the data tax incentive they want to do it. It turns out that that was an opportunity zone deal, and they wanted to keep the existing brick building, and no one would come. The companies won't come into to a wet old brick building. They want brand new because it has to be insured, and that's a big part of this process. So the insurance piece ties in so completely that they're going to have to take that building down and build a brand new building anyway. So that's the reason. You really can't do adaptive changes for data centers.
Donna Green. I think it's Green. Donna? Tom Tobin. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see her.
So this is the Verde lady tied to this other thing.
You have a question, or?
Well, a statement followed by a question, if I may.
And it's pertaining to the information of this proposal, or is it getting into something that was just brought up beforehand? Just to keep us on track.
May I speak?
Please.
Thank you kindly. Okay. For the record, my name is Donna Lewis Green, and I'm the widow. Is it on? Okay. I'm sorry. For the record, my name is Donna Lewis Green, and I am the widow of the late Joel Green. If I can just read this, he passed away a year ago, July 24th. Unfortunately, my story has yet to be told. I've been placed in a curious position. I've been very apprehensive about making any comments with regards to Tom Quinn and his associates, as they pretty much put the final nails on my late husband's coffin. Thomas made a comment that he did not work for Verde Group, and emails don't lie. The emails state that he was president and CEO. Now, unfortunately, the reason why my story hasn't been heard, because my sole job at the time was taking care of my late husband. So unfortunately, while that was happening, Thomas Quinn and his associates destroyed Verde Group. There was a theft of intellectual property. And again, when you're dealing in a position like that, you're not paying attention to your company. You're paying attention to the person you're caring for. Now, Tom...
I'm very sorry for your loss, but is there a question? It's just another statement, and I just would rather have this to be people that ask questions. So is there a question?
Okay, in speaking, okay, I shall. All right. In looking around at all these people here, I can see that they're hardworking and honest people. Why would these people want to deal with Thomas Quinn and his associates? Why would they want to deal with someone who steals?
I think we need to.
As I said, I'm very sorry for your
Why
loss.
would Groton want to deal with someone that steals? Why are...
Okay, those are accusations that are not being here, so I am sorry.
Emails don't
I am
lie,
sorry.
sir.
I'm sorry. I'm not here in a court.
Bank
I'm here as a
liars
volunteer for the
don't
town.
lie.
So I appreciate it, but thank you.
But why would they want to
John,
deal?
please.
Why would the
Folks, the reason for this, the reason for this meeting is for question against the proposal.
cheap used car salesman?
Okay.
All right.
Why?
John, please.
Okay, I guess I get to respond to that.
I prefer you not to, because this is not the venue for that.
Okay.
John, question, please.
Sure. So can you comment on any electrical rate agreements with Groton Utilities and the impact on Groton Utilities residential ratepayers?
Okay, I did this one already, but do you want me to go through it again?
I think you did cover that one.
If it's covered, I think we have a lot of
So
other
then,
people.
from Dave Gauthier, what labor will be used to build this facility?
What's that?
What labor will be used to build this
What
facility?
labor? Well, there'll be under 2,000 construction jobs, and there will be approximately the 80 to 160 jobs on the site, depending on size of the building.
Thank you.
Tom Tobin.
Oh, I know this.
Sorry? I want to make sure you can see the video. I just have one question. I came with several. However, I understand that in order to apply for the exemption from taxes, you will have to provide a lot of detailed information to a DECD.
That's right.
Including a detailed description of the capital project.
That's absolutely right. They look through all the spreadsheets, they see everything. That's right.
Well, I listened to you on February 8th, and I've listened to you tonight, and I don't seem to be getting any answers but vague percentages and NDAs. My question is, why don't you come back when you have a plan? Even Ressler had a plan that he could explain to us.
Okay, I'm not going to respond to that. The difference between that project and this project is the Groton has done a full check. I am not anything. Look at that's just a poke. I read your blogs. I read everything, Tom. I followed you. I followed you. What plan would you like to see? The financial plan?
I would like to see a plan of the project.
The plan of the project.
I would like to see.
Tom, if you read the legislation,
I want to read your
that
plan.
91% of the legislature vote for it. It says we must get through this piece, and then I go to planning and zoning, and then you see the project.
No, it doesn't say that at all.
Oh, it does too. You need to read it.
I would do.
Thank you. John.
Will the data center be seeking any Energy Star or LEED certifications?
It's in the agreement. There are 8 different types of certifications. Deep left it open. I didn't do that. Deep left it open because different companies use different types of certifications. They're not all the same, but they're generally all the same. Go ahead.
And that was from David Roden.
Thank you.
Liz Raisbeck.
Just to follow that up, the draft agreement that you have of the town says that you're using Tier 4 generators, but with Tier 2 backup. But you have said to us that you're using Tier 4. The reason that's a concern is Tier 2 are much dirtier than Tier 4. And would you consider using only Tier 4?
I didn't make that decision. It came down from the state, and that's what they wanted us to do. We could use all Tier 2 engines if we wanted to. It follows all the regular state and federal regulations. So you understand how this tier thing works. It's not mystical. If a car has a certain level of emissions, it's on the sticker. The generators are on the sticker. You take the sticker from whatever that emission number is, and it tells you how many hours you can or cannot operate that over the course of a period of time. So it's an engineering formula. So the Tier 2 are designed as strictly standby, separately permitted, and they only come on at a power outage. Tier 4 are going to be the ones that you would use if they're used for peak shaving. And only certain people, if it's a co-location environment, will peak shave anyway. So that's my answer. I can't say that we won't use Tier 2, but we're the only ones that have volunteered Tier 2, and we've met what the state asked us to do. And it failed in legislation. That failed, and I still put it in the agreement.
Okay. So when you are peak shaving, that's when you use more electricity during times of hot summer days. That's right.
So yeah, so what happens is when we get to brownout times and everyone's worried, the utility calls and says, be prepared to take your electricity from that data center offline. And then we take it offline, and it's usually an hour, 2 hours, something like that. It's a very small spike, but you have to shave it. And by the way, Groton does that already
Right.
folks are already doing it.
Well, I guess the question is, why would it be just 2 to 4 hours? Because when we have heat periods, they can go for weeks.
Good question.
And when you're running those generators, you're putting a lot more pollutants into the atmosphere.
Good question. It costs multiples of what it costs to purchase electricity to turn a generator on per kilowatt minute. It's very expensive. So you only use it sparingly where you need to. And there are formulas and engineers that do this. There are asset managers that would be working with the utility company, our asset managers, a hyperscaler asset manager, and they would decide collectively. It does not pay to leave a generator on, and your own utility company can tell you that. You have to shut it off as quickly as you can.
So would you sign an agreement that you're only using your generators for the project, so that you won't be selling it back to utilities?
So we can't sell it back to the grid by agreement with all the utility companies that we've talked to. You can't sell it back. We have no intention of selling it back. We're not doing that. No, we're just using it for the period, and it's only for proprietary use behind the meter.
John. So all the other questions I have, there are a number of different questions, but they're from people that have already asked a number of questions on Zoom, and I know we have a lot of people here.
We'll go through our list. We just wanted to be fair to our Zoom participants, so.
You can
Michelle.
get another piece of paper.
Michelle McCullum Green.
Hi, how you doing? I'm a Flanders Road resident. My parents have owned their home for 26 years. So far, we've noticed, so now I know additionally that city water and sewer will now be required of them if their well or sewer fails. We have an extended driveway, so that would be a significant cost that would occur to them, that they are not necessarily having the income. They're in retirement years, so that's a financial hardship for them. That's potential. You mentioned 260 to 160 employees and 3 different shifts, so that's 50 to 80 cars every shift added to our 2-lane road. Not to mention, this is post-construction, so the construction obviously is going to be pose a huge traffic problem on our road. So for speaking for Flanders residents, me personally, 80 cars per shift does seem pretty significant, and we don't have access to the highway. It's miles and miles from the highway, so it's not just on Flanders Road, but it would be scattered Route 1 towards the high school, middle school, various other areas. You said there's no light pollution, but you said that the parking lot's about an acre or 2, and it would be lighting overnight, I assume. So there would be parking lot lit.
If that's the question, so I would suggest that you come to the planning and zoning meeting, and we will address all your concerns, and we will be sensitive to all of the neighbors, and we will have a better idea of the sewer and water extensions. We don't know yet.
Okay.
And we will make sure that there is no light pollution out there. It doesn't have to be. These will not be hospital-sized overhead lights. The people go into the building with biometrics. They don't come out for 8 hours. There will be 80 cars total, not per shift, 80 cars total for the day in a 32-megawatt configuration, 160 if you have a hyperscale building. Roughly, these are rough numbers. It depends on how many they hire. I'm not in control of that. So
Okay,
you're talking
you
about
said
40.
160.
You're talking about 40 or 50 cars a shift at the maximum, but most likely it's going to be 25 or 28 cars a shift.
Well, mathematically, that doesn't work out to the number of employees that you're saying are going to be in the building. But so you said that the noise produced is not significant, but neighborhoods in Chandler, Arizona, and Chicago have had to organize against data centers because of complaints about 24/7 mosquito-type noise that they hear constantly. And I know that you did add sound attenuation construction to the plan. However, what does that mean for Flanders Road residents who may now hear this constant hum 24/7?
Okay, I'd like to answer the question. Chandler Road, Chandler, Arizona, that is probably the worst example of a data center ever. It's probably a 20-year-old or 18-year-old video. You can look it up and find out for yourself exactly. Could be 15. First of all, it's built next to a residential area. They permitted it in that town. Go ahead.
We're residential.
Yeah, but not, I'm talking on the residential area. It's much closer.
That green strip where you're trying to take over is essentially our front yard.
But that's not that's not with the setbacks that we're anticipating. The man that put the sticker on is hundreds and hundreds of feet back.
Hundreds of feet.
Hundreds of feet back. Yes, that's why I want you to come
noise
to...
attenuation, are there studies as to how the noise attenuation goes down from the distance from the building?
Exactly correct. It's in the agreement, and it's going to be closer up to the highway. They use the highway sound as a one-week study with a post high up in the air, the height of the data center building, and they do an ambient noise study. It's all formulaic, and the engineers do this, and it's all in the agreement.
They already did the study?
No, we can't do it until we get this document done. But we're going to have to do it at every. I included that, working with other towns too. I'm including that across the board, and it is the strictest sound attenuation language that we can find in the United States. Pretty darn strict.
How do you know you can't accomplish it if you haven't been able to test it?
Because in Hartford, I met with a concert venue attorney and their staff that had given us some feedback on some of this process for them. They had their own things they did, so I got some feedback. So this will require, as I said earlier, some type of a crane at the estimated height of the building, and it'll be taking sound from the 95 for like a week's time, and then they set a baseline level, and then the engineers then have to build it around it. If the building doesn't operate to that spec, you have to go back to the town, they have to get it fixed within a period of time, and so forth. But I can tell you, this is hyperscale data business. They're going to have the best engineers out there, and they're going to know. They're not going to build a multi-$100 million building on a guess. They're going to have this figured out for the sound attenuation, or they could tell us we're not going to build there.
Is there a standard that you're required to meet regulation-wise as far as noise?
There is no standard. We're putting in an additional standard in. There's no standard.
So it's
for
really
that.
up to you.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. There are state sound standards, and I don't know if Groton has their own max decibel standard, but this will be way less than what the town has, because the town has it set up for, parties and outdoor events and so forth. So this will be a different setup. And please read the host fee agreement instructions. And I invite you to please come to the planning and zoning meeting. We'll try to have that better addressed.
Yeah, because that is the main concern.
Thank you.
One more. What do you say to the Flanders residents whose property values will fall because of this development?
Well, it's just a guess that they'll fall.
No one's going to want to move in near a data center.
No, I think that okay, so you've already made your decision. I'll go on to the next question.
All right.
It was a legitimate question.
Everyone, I want to appreciate the civility so far, but I want to remind you that this is not a deliberative body. We're not making decisions here. Mr. Quinn has volunteered to come here and answer questions, so he's not obliged to answer any questions. He's not obliged to even stay any further. So if we want to get through here, we got another 10 or 15 people that have signed up for questions. So please ask a question that has not been asked, so that he can answer and we could move on. So, who's next on the list? Robert? Tumberry?
Tom Berry.
Tom Berry.
I have no questions or comments, and the next name on her is Charlene Lynch, and she has left.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joan Smith.
Hello. I'd like to address the terrain of this property.
and have questions related to that. It's a very steep ridge. The ridge line is filled with water. You can see it whenever you see a highway cut. You'll see frozen waterfalls coming out of the cracks. There are cracks and fissures containing water. There will be a massive amount of grading required and possibly a retaining wall. The water that flows from Hazelnut Hill goes to the reservoir. There is ridgeline on both sides of the highway. So I have a question. Where is the utility corridor going to go? South of I-95 has wetlands, a basin that's facing the reservoir. And if you keep going further east, you've got large ridges. And if you go north, up where the landfill is, from Route 117, you've got very steep, high ridge. So my question is, where will the utility corridor come in? The water, the sewer, and the fiber?
None of that's up to me. It's all up to the utility company. We do have a utility corridor guesstimate at this point, and that's all we could do because the utility is putting together the last of it. But along the highway is where it's going to come up. The utility company has a corridor there. There is a piece of land that we have now under contract that is not shown on the plan, just under contract. It is the triangle above the second road connection on Hazelnut Hill. 5 acres, Chris? 5 acres. It's the triangle piece. Deb, yeah, could you, yeah, that piece right there. That piece, and it'll run up along there, along the highway, so a good chunk of it will be paralleling.
Okay, that area drains to the reservoir. And so that follows with my next question, is if there has to be this large amount of grading, how are you going to accommodate the change in the water table?
Well, you have right now a reservoir with power lines running right over the whole reservoir, stuck in the water or stuck next to the water on both sides of it. This would be in solid earth, a pole in solid earth with a transmission line on it. That's what it is.
And where's the cable, the fiber cable?
The fiber is underground. It goes to a building between the building that we're proposing and the edge of the highway for a switching area, and it goes underground, and it actually gets into the center of I-95, and that isn't exactly located yet. People don't want to tell you where that is for real reasons, but it will be in the center of that area to hook up to Main.
That has a lot of ridge, and Fort Hill Brook comes through. There's a culvert that comes onto the property, and there's a second culvert further east. So there are wetlands abutting the highway as well as this ridge.
I'm sure that's all accurate.
Okay.
This is an underground, contained, multi-conduit type thing that goes underground into the highway area to hook into the main trunk fiber. The disturbance area should not be large.
Okay. And then also, I checked with an LID engineer, and he said for a 7-acre impervious surface, there are about 255,000 gallons per 1 inch of rain. And we get some pretty good rainstorms. And on top of that, there is phosphorus and nitrogen deposition from the atmosphere, which would run off. And so it'll take a lot of engineering, and I guess you're going to refer to the engineers to capture this water. This ground will not infiltrate. It will not clean the water. It is, as I said, it's ledge with a lot of water. So you're going to have a large structure, a lined bathtub-type style structure to contain the water, so it'll drain out slowly and pre-treat the water. before then, it'll flow towards the reservoir or in the other direction towards Fort Hill Brook, which is a clean waterway, but it's at risk.
Okay, I appreciate your comments. I sincerely do. I will tell you that DEEP has to review these. We have to meet all the state standards, and you know they're very strict. They're going to be looking at these same issues after we get this done, after we get envelope plan approval, then we would submit all of that to DEEP for approval, and you're welcome to come to both the inland waterways meetings, the zoning meetings, and you can comment directly to DEEP. They're going to be very strict with us at DEEP.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay.
And those are good comments, by the way.
No,
Those are
I
really
just
solid
wonder if you're putting the cart before the horse, and if it's maybe wouldn't happen because of this, then you've put all this effort into getting that far.
This is the process the law says we have to follow.
All right, so next question from
Thank you.
Lynn Batcho. Lynn?
This is about the sound levels, and I didn't quite understand what you said, and I'd like some clarification. One thing I thought you said was that, I get it that you're measuring the sound level over time from I-95, and that the building, the data center, that it would not produce a higher level of sound than that. Then the other thing I thought I heard you say was that you have the sound level of 95, and that the data center would not add more to that. Those are two very different statements.
Let me just be clear about that.
Yeah.
What it says is, in the Groton agreement, is that we have to come back to the sound and work with the town on sound level. So let's say we're 2 decibels above the highway level, or we don't get the job built. Well, we have to go to the town and we have to go through that. So there is going to be a little bit of we're asking for a little bit. No one's got studies. The town doesn't have studies. We're going to pay for these studies. So we need to get some baseline information. Again, this is zoning, and then we have to get through the process. You're going to be reading about it daily in the papers, I'm sure, and the blogs, and you'll be able to comment through the process. But no one's trying to get around anything. This is going to be a very scientific study. We have volunteered it in other places in the state, and we were asked to do it in the town of Wallingford, and we went along with that process. Frankly, I'm not sure of exactly how that study is going to come out, and we've consulted with some sustainability officers of the companies that we're trying to attract here, and they're not sure how it's going to come out yet, but we're hopeful that we can get it to where it needs to be. And it's Groton's decision at that point whether or not they want it or not. It's not mine.
Well, I was just wondering, what criteria you were going to be trying to meet. And then you were saying that your mechanicals were on top of the building and that you had ways to attenuate the sound from there. And I was just curious what techniques you'd be using, how many dB of attenuation you think you could achieve, and then what frequency range?
That's a good question. I have no idea what frequency range, but let me give you an example. They'll have an air conditioner on a roof, and they have a panel that actually sends the sound either straight up or in the direction of ambient sound, which would be over 95, for example. So there are ways to do this that engineers spend a lot of time and effort on to get these things to where they need to be. I don't have that information here tonight. This was about the host agreement, but you're welcome to come to the meetings, and this will all be brought forth. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Lynn. Michael Boucher. Boucher.
That's the French way to say it. A couple of questions. I missed the one about the possible taxes on the property. So you mentioned $1.5 million approximately in fees per year. And if it was a taxable property, what would?
If you build a very small data center, up to you have to pay the town at least $500,000 no matter what you build. If you build over 16 megawatts or greater, which is a data center, probably 4 times, I'm guessing, 4 times by how many servers you'd put in, 4 times the size of this room, you'd have to pay, or maybe 6 times the size of this room, you'd have to go up to $1 million, and then you hit 32 megawatts, you have to pay $1.5 million.
Right.
So the town, I saw something in one of my emails today that a company that, well, let me just give you an example. In other towns, I didn't do it, the town did. They looked at the industrial site, they figured out the square footage of the site for industrial use, they figured out the square footage of the building with the parking all against current zoning, and this is multiples of that. But you have to factor in the total economic benefit, which is the utility profit along with the municipal fee of $1.5 million.
So, yeah, okay, but could you give me an estimate of what, under a normal tax scenario, what would you be paying per year versus the 1.5 million?
Okay,
say?
it all depends on the size of the building approved. So it could be $5 or $6 million a year. That's the whole idea behind having data tax incentives in place by the state.
No, I totally understand that. I just
so it
wanted
would
the
be
difference.
somewhere around that number.
Okay.
But depending on size.
GU money actually just goes to the city of Groton. The town doesn't benefit. Not that that's a big deal, but just so you know.
Oh, I did hear something about that.
Yeah, it's kind of a complicated business in Groton. Brownouts and blackouts, how long can a generator run for? How long can you sustain?
Until it runs out of fuel.
No, realistically. I mean, obviously you can refill.
Here's what will happen. The engineers are going to do a chart, and they're going to say there have been this many power outages for this long over the last 20 years. This is the mean. We're going to store 20% more diesel than the mean, if something like this will happen. And then they will actually create and order tank sizes to do just that, so they don't have to be refilled in the course of a power outage. Now, in an extreme case, I was around during Hurricane Bob in the early 90s, right? And I was out on Cape Cod then, and we were without power for 9 days. That's a real tough situation to be in for a data center. And in fact, there's a major data center, I don't want to be quoted, throwing the names around, that has major failures even down in North Virginia where there's power, there's issues. So we want to do the best we can in the region. You know, we're fighting a few things here. We're fighting the proximity to the nuclear power plant because some data centers don't want to be there, but in other areas, there are nuclear power plants very close to data centers. So there's that, there's climate, there's hurricanes, but all of this gets taken care of because of the newest construction, tilt-up concrete, regional utility. You have the big substation, Buddington, not too far away, so the connectivity's close. You have new transmission coming into that substation. So, you know, we think as far as outages go, to answer your question, hours to days, depending on what the engineers draw up, but we won't know until then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next question will be from Gail.
Sorry.
Well, the other people do have to speak.
No, that's fine. Can I come back?
We can, at the end, if he's willing to stay, we can come back.
Yeah, I'll stay if you want to talk.
Thank you.
My better questions are at the end.
Thank you very much.
Gail Sanchez. Denise Katuska. I apologize for I'm not doing good on pronunciations.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out, you have also heard this, that there are numerous streams and wetlands included in this property, as you can see by those dark blue sign. And they are under the National Wetlands Inventory, part of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I'd like to know if you have talked to them about it and then what they say about it. And in addition, I am very concerned with the impact on the Flanders Road community. We do all have wells, and you're talking about a 24/7 business with increased traffic, noise from the continuous cooling fans and everything else. And I don't know, obviously, you're not real familiar with Flanders Road because we're not near 95. And part of the problem on Flanders Road is the traffic that we now already receive. And I want to know what you're going to do about that, how you're going to help out in making sure there are no one dies from all the accidents with all that traffic, in addition to what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has to say.
Okay. I'll address the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This is under the jurisdiction first of the inland waterways in this town. Then it goes to the state of Connecticut for DEEP.
Right.
The National Wildlife Service can talk to DEEP, but that's my approval process by law.
Okay, I'll go right to them then. How about the second question?
Which was?
Which was, there already is an enormous amount of traffic.
There will be more
on Flanders Road, and what are you going to do to curtail any accidents and people dying from
I can't curtail anything sitting in this seat tonight, but I can assure you that the town's going to require police details. The police are going to be busy in this area. There will be traffic. There will be a couple thousand jobs for about a year or so. Some of these new construction jobs that are running for the hyperscale data centers are going as quick as 11 to 13 months, very fast. These are big buildings. And some are taking longer depending on not just the construction company, but depend on the complication of the design if it's co-location. So it could be anywhere for about, I would say roughly, conservatively, between a year and a half of construction. There will be traffic. And they will have, the town will tell us, we won't tell them, how we're going to protect the road. We're going to have to hire this many police details. It'll all be in the draft with the town.
Because you do keep talking about it being on 95, and it obviously is going to be a higher impact on Flanders Road.
Right. Thank you. Mike, at 441 Hazelnut Trail Drive, that I can read. Mike.
Mike the Horner. One thing, you said the building materials and everything are going to come off the exit onto Flanders Road. Have you been up there? There is no exit on Flanders Road.
No, I know. I got
Okay. This all sounds real good. I mean, you saying go on the website, go look on this. Where is the stuff here? You're saying go to Arizona, look at this one, go to that one. You're trying to sell a product here, and you just sound like a salesman. Okay, you're going to do all the utilities. We all have wells. Okay, there's blasting. Okay, who's going to pay for our wells? Okay, that's a question.
This is going to be hundreds and hundreds of feet away from any house.
Do you realize I work heavy construction? We blast. We blast all the time. You blast here, it could affect a well a mile away. Okay? So you really don't know what you're talking about there about blasting.
Okay. Then you know about construction bonding and insurance?
Are you going to insure the people's wells? That's a different thing. Every time you blast, you got to get insurance. A lot of times they make the homeowners get insurance on their wells.
Okay.
Okay?
So if you come to the planning and zoning meeting, we'll make sure we address that.
Okay. Are you going to have satellites on the top of this building?
Satellites? You mean dishes or something?
Dishes,
no.
right. There will be no dishes.
No.
No radio frequencies going up.
Please, just Google, Facebook.
I'm not Googling anything. I'm asking you.
No, we don't have any.
You're here for the answers.
Okay.
You're the one that's trying to sell us.
I said
give
no
us the
twice.
answers. I'm not Googling
Now 3
anything.
times. No.
I don't use a computer.
All right. Thank you.
All right?
Thank you.
Let's see. Jamie Newson? Jamie, anything? Okay. Kevin Blackard. Michael Kane.
Kevin Blackard.
Oh, this Kevin. Okay, from the back.
So energy consumption of the project, I know you mentioned it.
How many megawatts of?
Depending on the selection process, depending on one or two people, depending on if it's a cloud or ends up being a co-location, between 100 and 250 megawatts.
Okay, and so to put that into context, if I'm understanding this correctly, like the South Fork Wind Project, which is going to supply New York, is 132 megawatts. Are we comparing apples to apples?
I don't know anything about the Southport Wind Project.
The South Fork Wind Project, 132. I'm trying to get a sense of energy consumption. You mentioned
it's huge. The energy consumption's huge. But
Okay,
they currently have the ability.
that's what I'm getting at. To put it into context, South Fork Wind set to be shipped out of State Pier, New London, 132 megawatts. You're talking potentially larger, significantly larger than that. Next question, the servers, how often do they have to be replaced?
It depends on the user. So hyperscale data companies don't give a lot of information, but it's approximately
just roughly.
Every 3.5 years, they're replacing servers.
And what happens to them?
They take them off.
Okay, so was proximity to the dump, was that part of?
They won't be dumping them anywhere in Groton. We'll put it in the agreement.
But when you say they're taken off, they're taken somewhere. These are consumables. Is that a fair assessment?
Are servers consumables?
Yeah.
I don't build servers. I don't know what can be recycled from a server, if that's your question.
Okay, so I'd say it sounds like they're garbage. You were at the table for I believe you said for the, emergency or the legislation. Is that accurate? For the legislation that gave the tax breaks to data centers, were you involved in helping form and pass that legislation?
Yes.
Was Eversource at the table, or Dominion?
I've had so
just a simple question.
Wait a minute, you're not going to stand there, and I'm not under cross-examination. I'm here voluntarily, so you address me properly and respectfully.
Okay. It's a simple question. It's a simple and fair question.
Let me give you the answer, and don't cut me off. I met with Eversource. I met with Dominion, the nuclear people. I met with Ørsted. I met with the owner of the Montville power plant that isn't built yet. I have met with every energy provider in the region, including every municipal utility in this state. So what is the challenge you're trying to get out of me here? What do you want to know?
Well, you answered my question. It seems as though these data centers are a very sweet deal for the energy producers. We heard earlier from a number of the labor unions that it's a very sweet deal for them. I would question whether it is for us, the public. Now, my final question, which I'm going to turn and ask the people in this room.
No, we're not.
All right, then I'll ask the question to you. It's a simple question.
Go ahead.
Is it time, considering the environmental harm to the site and from energy consumption and from the consumables, that we as a society consider the environmental cost of our consumption of data? And that is the most important question, I believe, that anybody will ask. You gave a very helpful presentation tonight illuminating the waste and the environmental cost of data that people don't consider when they pull out their smartphone.
All right, thank you.
That's right, thank you.
All right, we're almost at the end, folks. Michael Kane.
I would like to use the map if I could. Just want to pull this around because I know that I sure couldn't see it. Welcome to Groton. So let me just get over here. You're up in this area here.
Yeah, I think
that's right. Right. I just generally in this area.
Yeah.
Just off the map here is Ring Drive. About a year and a half ago, airplane flew into a house down there. It was actually the father-in-law of Joe Dela Cruz, our state representative. This is on the direct Groton New London Airport. It's about down here somewhere. You are on the flight path of the Groton New London Airport. We've been struggling for years to bring in commercial planes into that airport. So my question is, I'd like to know how this would affect possibly future development at the airport. I would also, with that accident that happened here, we get every couple of years planes go down in the area. I actually and my wife rode out to a plane that went down in Baker's Cove several years back to pull people out of the water. How would this building be impacted by an airplane that would hit it? And I would like to know the environmental impacts if there was a major fire at this place, specifically the fire suppression system that would be put into this building. Thank you.
The fire department has previously given a letter to the town some long time ago, but I think they can speak for themselves that we're using a particular type of system that's non-pollutant. With regard, we don't design around planes crashing into buildings, and I don't want to get into all of that, but I'll tell you that the data center does sit down a little bit lower from the highway. We don't know how low with final grading, so I'm not going to be pinned down to it, but it does sit down lower. When you drive by the highway, you see a very interesting thing happen before exit or around exit 88 area. You see the topography go up and down. Yes, there is going to be grading in the number of acres necessary to set the building. It's going, if the town approves it, it's going to be graded in that level. The building won't be sticking up like a low-rise apartment building off the highway because it sits down further along that area. So let's hope we don't have any plane activity over there. We know it's fairly close to the flight path. We do know that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Sima Eben.
Doesn't sound like it's a concern.
Asked and answered. Thank you. Sima Eben.
Still, it will remain out there, and I'll ask you it again. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Good evening, everyone. So, yeah, I have got to say, I've heard a real lack of specificity in the presentation tonight. Lauren Gauthier asked a really good question, I thought, which you chose not to give any specifics, which was, what would the value in taxes be of this enterprise if you didn't get the tax abatement from the state? You said it would be substantial, but it would be really good to know.
Let me be crystal clear. It depends on the size of the building that the town of Groton finally approves. Then you multiply by the mill rate, right? And you figure out what it would be. But let me give you a rough example. If a 32 megawatt building went out there based on the tax rate, rough example, it would be $6 million a year.
So you're getting basically a $4.5 million.
I don't get any of that. No.
Okay.
Groton gets a data center because I don't get any of that. Groton gets a data center because you need to meet 4 national market metrics to bring a data center: regulation, tax incentives, cost of utility, and fiber. If you don't have those, they don't come to your area.
But you're getting a $4.5 million subsidy.
I'm not getting it.
Well, what is your position in this company then? What is the company?
Okay, I'm not going to start rolling it.
Well, I missed it.
Thank you. I'm here, Val.
No, I have other questions.
I've answered
Thank
the
you. I'll
tax
move on
question.
to my other ones. I'm just wondering, with that, I mean, having an industry like this costs services. We get lots of presentations from our Office of Planning, and they like to talk about what kind of contribution these projects have towards our grand list. They tout that, but there's a real lack of what the costs or the burden that the town bears on the other side. And so it sounds like there's going to be major road, public works infrastructure needed on Flanders Road if you have 1,000 people driving to work there plus dump trucks. So I am curious, and I imagine it hasn't been done yet, but I am curious about estimates on the cost of services for this entity, just to see if it, the town sounds like it's getting a $1.5 million host fee, but, is that going to bear the cost of, the infrastructure, the fire, all the other services that the town has?
Let me address that right now, please.
Okay.
All of the costs of the upgrade of any road, any sewer, any water, any electric, or any other improvements, police details, fire department, all the permitting is paid for by the developer.
Okay. What happens, and Groton also has a really bad track record with businesses that have gotten tax subsidies and then left when their tax subsidies run out, notably Pfizer. what are your plans for decommissioning, or what are your plans in 20 years when your tax subsidy?
I'll be dead, but I hope somebody else is around to work on it.
Are there any plans for decommissioning, or what
There are no plans for decommissioning. I just said earlier, data centers are the highest #1 asset class in the world. In other words, they're very valuable. This particular location, because of its proximity to 1/10 of the population in the United States, very likely over 30 years, I can't tell you what's going to happen in 30 years, but likely it would be fully remodeled on the original footprint with permission from planning and zoning, and they would continue on. There haven't been any data centers that have been chucked off to the side and abandoned in the United States. They're all being remodeled. Even the old AOL centers in Manassas, Virginia. This old metal building that people thought was not valuable, it's all being rebuilt into a new data center. These sites are extremely valuable for a few reasons. The #1 reason is major electricity has already been brought to the site, which is a huge expense. So it gives a good incentive to, anyway, these guys I can tell want me to be quiet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Kuhn?
Good evening. My name is Chris Kuhn, and I'm sincerely trying to understand, not to interrogate, exactly what role you play. Are you a consultant at this point?
No.
What is your
I'm the
role?
manager of the LLC that owns the entity.
So basically, we don't yet know which data centers will be interested in building out.
Okay.
We don't know the financiers. Are you essentially a broker that comes in and makes the purchase and
No.
arranges the permits?
Okay, so let me just lay this out for you. I've conceptualized this deal over the last few years. I've put together a program. We have JV, joint venture, opportunities currently in the marketplace if we can get this package approved. That means that our team, and our team is a lot bigger than the people that are here tonight. Some are in Florida and out west. That team of electrical consultants and engineers and so forth stay along with the deal for the entire length of the negotiated deal. So the deal would work like this. We get our approvals. We go to our JV partners and we say, one or two of them, and we say, here's what we have, let's make this deal. We get a term sheet. We then take the term sheet back to the planning and zoning and say, look, we've got this list. They want this list. Do you think we can accommodate a building that's 51 square feet instead of 53, or whatever that list is, okay? We're going to come back, and then they're going to have their engineers bring a building in. Then you see me again, I'm siting the building, doing all the work. So I'm a partner in the project.
Okay.
A general partner.
Thank you. And then my second question is it your understanding that you have to get a host agreement at the front end?
Okay, so I want to explain this because a lot of people have asked.
This is related to my second question. How can the town council evaluate for a host agreement if they don't have a plan and planning and zoning and wetlands has not yet considered the details of the situation?
Okay, this was done specifically at the state level. This was not my decision. I went around to all of the various entities and I got stopped at Connecticut Council on Municipalities. They said, wait a minute, we don't want you wasting planning and zoning time for a year in permitting unless you have your business deal done first with the town. We took those comments, we brought it back to former Attorney General of the state, and he was working with us at the time, and then it was redrafted because they wanted to make sure that the business deal was done. Now, if this gets stopped in zoning, or the zoning is so restrictive that it doesn't pay to build a data center, then that's where it stops.
So you're saying that the town is required by the state to give you a host agreement before you go to planning?
They can say no to a host agreement.
So the town could say no?
They can say
the town
anything they
council
want.
could say no? Okay.
The agreement empowers the town to do whatever they want.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Kenny Reels.
How you doing? Good evening, everybody. I'm just speaking as one of the community members of Connecticut. And I actually deleted my question, but I tried to hit the wrong button. Anyway, this will be quick. My question is, why do you not have the money to complete the whole project when other developments, data center developers come into communities and they show the money up front so that they can be taken seriously? They know, and us as the London County communities and the state of Connecticut communities, that we're not going to be stuck in the middle of a project if it started and we know there is a big demand for data centers, and we know that that this is the most populated area in the United States between Boston and New York, and the infrastructure is here for it, that we're not stuck because a developer is being considered or allowed to start a project and they don't have the funding to finish it, but there's kind of being like piecemeal, and as it gets along and moves along and a little more gets approved, then maybe they can get funding, maybe then a major developer will step in and team up with them when should maybe be waiting.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
My question is, why do you not have the funding?
Okay.
Now when why should we as communities of Connecticut, and data centers are in such a demand, and they're going to be here.
Mr. Reels, we all know you.
I have the funding.
We all know you. Do you live in Groton?
I live in Connecticut. This was my ancestral land, Groton.
Okay.
I have fishing and hunting rights all throughout Connecticut.
Okay.
I have a right to walk from where I am to the fishing grounds of my ancestors.
Okay, so I'll answer your question, and I'll give you an example. In another town, closer to New York, for 1 year, a company was in there trying to get something put together. If you do your homework, you'll find out that it was a major, one of the top 5 companies, and they don't come in often under their own name. I can tell you honestly, I do not work for any of those companies. I can tell you that we have interest at levels that will finance the entire project. Whether or not we, as JV partners, do anything else but go through our statutory permitting for town, state, federal. By the way, all this has to go through the federal government and the EPA as well. So I appreciate your comments, Mr. Reels. I can assure you that this project will be well funded. I want to just tell everybody, no bank, no financial institution, no one on Wall Street, and this is where the money's going to come from for this deal, no one puts in this kind of money and allows a half-built project. The property is bonded by Willis Towers Watson or Lloyd's of London, all of it, from the road up Flanders Road for the water and sewer, to the roadways within the project, to the building financing itself. And Mr. Reels, you should know that is, you know about bonding and financing buildings. So it's built the same way. And yes, it's a large building. So in other words, no one's taking a chance or any risk. They have to make sure that everything is done, and when it's done, the project's bonded and it's built. You can be assured, please just look it up. You'll see how many beta projects have failed in the United States. You can go through all of this stuff. It's all available online. If you spend a half hour, you'll learn a lot about it.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now 8 o'clock. We're going to close the meeting. I want to thank you, Mr. Quinn, for your participation and volunteering to come. Guys, this is just the very beginning. There'll be the opportunities before the planning and zoning, before the town council, where the decisions are made. This was meant to be informational for you, and I hope it accomplished that end. Any summary comment you'd like to make?
No, I just thank you all for coming. I do appreciate the comments. I really do. It's been a long haul to get here, and thanks a lot. Appreciate it.